Now, do you approach philanthropy in the same way you approach business? You see a gap in the market in an area that you're interested in and fill it?
Well, I'm not sure, Kirsty, that that's even how I approach business. I mean, my company, which was eventually a resounding success, really started off not to make money. It was a crusade for women, that it was to offer employment opportunities to women, and including me, so that I could go on with a vigorous professional career even after I had domestic responsibilities. And that start made it really a social business. I was measuring success, not just by the bottom line, though you have to do that, and I kept some positive cash flow for just about going. But the idea that you measured success, I did, in terms of employment. How many people were we employing? How many people were we employing for whom we were the prime funder? How many people were we employing with disabilities? How many people were we employing of different characteristics? And so the business and the not-for-profits are very, very similar most of the time, but they're just some different metrics. And we've got some different terminology. We don't talk about marketing, we talk about fundraising. It's exactly the same things that you do in marketing. So I've had a wonderful time converting from such business experience as I garnered to a philanthropist, and I am ardent about it. I really enjoy it, and that's one of the ways, I think, in which I don't measure in the same way as many people here. And I do think charities, they're not businesses, but they have to be business-like, and they have to be, I find in my giving, it's not enough to give, it's not enough to do good, we have to make it sustainable. And in venture philanthropy, I'm running projects, many of which I initiate myself, but I'm running projects. Can I get this project sustainable? And that's how I measure my own personal success. Well, my life was saved. I had to cope with a new language, new family, new food, new religion, new everything. And what happened with refugees is at that time people were not terribly tactful, and I had lots of people saying to me, "Aren't you lucky to have been saved?" And that's not a healthy thing to be saying to a 6-year-old. But I did feel and do feel very, very lucky to be saved, and grateful to the many, many strangers who made that happen. And it seems to me inconceivable that somebody like me, who has been through poverty, who has fainted from hunger, should not start giving back. I do give to the sort of traditional, the poor of the world, but mainly through disability. I try really to get much more involved in charities. I really say, and mean it, that I never just write a cheque, because I find just writing a cheque demeans both me and the recipient. And I know how easy it is to feel patronized, and I really try to avoid that and give with a warm hand and give generously and give without people having to ask, and give perhaps more than people expect. But I often say no as well. So I'm businesslike, I think, about my giving. So I give to things where it's a sort of reciprocal relationship. What I get from my gift is just as much as what people get from my money.
So you give your time as well?
I give time, skills, contacts, and money. And it's part of me. As I say, I don't want to just write checks. I have a bit of money. I'm prepared to give it. I'm willing to give it. I'm wanting to give it. But I also want to get something back. And that means I need to give to places that I'm interested in, schools that I've attended in the past, hospitals that my son has gone to. These are the sorts of things which really call to me. And I come across many professional fundraisers, and of course it's difficult to feel that passionate about everything that you're doing. But I like to feel that initiative, that passion, that drive. And so what I'm doing today is not all that dissimilar to what I was doing in business. Variable.
So have you got any advice then for fundraisers and people in development in this room looking to approach female philanthropists like yourself, how they should go about it? I mean, I know you said that you actually don't see a difference, so but I suppose somebody like you, let's
Well, you have to have a couple of trigger points. Why should Steve be interested in this? And it could be for refugees, or it could be largely for women. I mean, you know, the number of disabled charities that write to me and say that they also cover autism is just unspeakable. But of course, they're trying to focus their activities into one particular way. So I feel a bit vulnerable in that way. I feel it's very difficult to make new friends, new contacts, because of my wealth. And so I keep, I think, a fairly low profile. I talk to groups like this, trying to present what I learnt in my year as the ambassador for philanthropy, that philanthropy really can be fun, it can be pleasurable, we should choose it not to do good, but for the kick that it gives us. Taxation, I haven't any idea about the sort of fancy stuff, but I do know that it needs to be simple. And if the tax is simple so that we understand it, we will all give more. And I was very involved in this gift aid taxation change that took place in 2010. But it's a very personal thing. I'm actually putting my hand in my pocket and giving it, I hope, with a warm... It's clear that the family needs to think about itself. I mean, I sounded like a very selfish person. You think about yourself. What is this family all about? Are we for public service? Are we for autism? Whatever it is. And we think where we want to go. And then we start thinking about a route which may include, or probably will include, philanthropy. So it is quite structured. To me, it's intuitive. I don't sit down with lots of reports and talk about, you know, the 28th dectile or whatever it is. I get the ideas from my philanthropy, and I often think where that innovation comes from, because I'm innovative in other ways as well. And I really don't know where it comes from. And you suddenly think, yes, I could do that. And it is, again, I keep talking about this very selfish thing, that the pleasure of knowing that I can make something happen. And when we give to a lecture theatre or whatever it is, you can really look at it and sort of say, yes, I made a difference there. And that's what philanthropists want to do, to make a difference.
What's been your most satisfying philanthropic moment in your life?
Well, the one I'm most proud of is having taken my own company, which was eventually worth about $3 billion, into co-ownership. And that really was much bigger than any of the other actual cash benefactions that I made, because that was a very successful company. I gave a quarter of it away. But the satisfying one actually is represented in this room, and I'm going to ask Shay, Mike, please stand up. Are you there? Yes. Mike is the chief executive of my most beloved charity, and I have had about 70 different projects. He's head of Prowse Court School, which is a wonderful school for autistic children. And my husband says every time I come back from Prowse Court, I've got a big smile on my face. And there's something about the place, there's something about the idea of supporting and loving children who don't know which way is up, they have no understanding of danger, they are without speech, they are autistic, they are very, very vulnerable. And to be able to know that one can make a real difference to their lives and their families' lives gives me such satisfaction that, as I say, I always come back from Prowse Court with a big smile.
So how can we get people to give more? I know that's a very big question, but I know it's something you've thought about.
I think taxation does come into it. But I think to give oneself and to talk about the pleasure of one's giving leverages that gift in a very realistic way, in that I have much more impact on the gifts that I've leveraged rather than what I've actually given myself, and given serious money. Got a great kick out of it. Nothing's more valuable.
How can charities make the case to earn that trust to get more general operating support?
Well, I think charities have to be very straightforward about that nothing happens without that administration. You know, the lights don't go on unless somebody pays the electricity bill. And that is a message that charities have to give to their potential donors. It can't all be projects. We also need to wrap up the costs of projects with the overhead, so that if you're if you were marketing something, you'd add 10% for overheads all the time, so that people understand without those unrestricted gifts, nothing is going to happen. I think the separation will soon disappear, because why should... I mean, in a way, when you give something, you show interest when you follow it up, but you should be able to give and let it go. And that really means we need to... I don't know where this sentence is going. Let's start again. Yeah.
Well, so in other words, I mean, it's up to the charity to make that convincing case that it's not just about bricks and mortar. You then have to keep it going.
Indeed.
And then, of course, that's a bit less glamorous, isn't it? I suppose, for the giver.
Well, capital items are very satisfying to the donor. Again, you can see that microscope every time I see it. If I go up there, I think, wow, I gave that. It's enormous. I haven't a clue how to switch it on even. But, you know, it's very important to researchers. We have a lot of selling to do in charities to make sure that we are business-like, that we are honest in our promises, that we are realistic in our reporting, that we do actually talk about the difficulties as well as the successes. And in marketing, we always sort of emphasize the successes. I mean, I talk about the charities that are, you know, they're great. Together they employ 1,000 people now. They're doing wonderful work. But I've also had some failures. I've had gifts that haven't got to the right recipient because something's happened wrong with the admin. I've had gifts to a charity that went bust in the middle of the project. The charity went insolvent, so I hadn't even checked the charity out. You get more and more tough. If you're not careful, you get more and more negative about it. Well, I'm not giving it to you if you're in financial trouble. I'm not giving it to you if you're wearing a red jacket. I'm not giving, you know, and this business about getting the pleasure of giving will dissipate unless you can be modestly businesslike and then just let it go and see what happens.
Been working with and learning from other philanthropists and exchanging lessons and learning from each other and comparing notes and...
Yes, we do that quite a lot, informally and also formally. I also read a great deal, everything from Harvard to Yale. There is a lot to learn. I concentrate on American and English philanthropy because, and when I was the ambassador, I went a lot by invitation to different parts of Europe, in particular Eastern Europe, where I found that they were so excited about having thrown off the communist yoke, that they were really very, very interested in philanthropy. And a lot of the countries are quite small, so that if you had a good idea, you'd sort of say, well, let's just walk across and tell the Prime Minister. And, you know, we'd walk across the market square. It was great. I felt I was moving things along there. And again, I like to feel that I'm effective, that I have moved things along. Yes, that bit of legislation comes from something that I started.
Talked about taxation and gift aid. And in fact, Stelio Stefano, the chairman of our charity, was shoulder to shoulder with you when we had the battle. But underlying all of that, there was a sense that politicians really didn't understand the value of philanthropy. And has it got any better? Is it any different? You know, how would you say that understanding is these days?
I find it disappointingly that it hasn't changed a great deal. The Americans pro rata give in a somewhat different way, in a much more positive way. And I think that is because as soon as somebody is established in the States, their philanthropy becomes their social life. Whereas here we are still restricted from some of the remnants of class that we still have. I hope that as that changes, the philanthropic giving will increase as well. Mr. Chan was talking, I just heard about poor people, people of modest incomes give more to charity pro rata than wealthy people. And you sort of think, well, you know, and it is simply because we've been there. We have some sensitivity to the screaming problems of this world. And we know we can't change it all, but I can change this little bit. I can change that sector. I can impact that country. Or, as he said, just change one person.